going to tell you a little bit. After having been basically berated for having this idealistic perception of social media etiquette and saying, well, the leaders, the early adopters are the ones who have this moral obligation, I went back to my own research, and my research has been in environmental policy and particularly in rules and norms. And the main rules and norms that govern your lives, for example, is the sanctimonious institution of marriage. Marriage is an institution, it's a set of rules and norms where there is a husband and a husband, a wife and a wife, or a husband and a wife, and the children. The members of that institution vary with each one of the marriages, but the institution itself is just one. So I went back to my institutional theory books and I said, well, what happens in social media is that the early adopters create those rules and norms, and then they create an institution. Right now, Twitter is an institution. It's a set of rules and norms. How we use Twitter is an institution. And it's an institution that has been established by the early adopters. That, contrary to what I used to believe, is not the result of a moral obligation, it's just time. But the problem is that technology will always outpace law and policy. Our laws and our policies are never, ever on time or aligned with the technology. So the best use that I can see for social media etiquette is to, I think I see the social media etiquette body of work as an organic process, as the organic formation of an institution. But I don't foresee, at least in Vancouver, that this institution will be mature enough at least until December of 2009. My estimation is by 2010 we're going to go back. We will already have mastered all the platforms, Twitter, Flickr, Facebook, and so on, but in 2010 we're going to have to go back to what Web 2.0 meant, really, which was the bidirectional kind of behavior, the conversation. So I think that's what we're going to see in regards to social media etiquette in 2010. We're going to see the evolution of an institution of communication, of bidirectional communication.
I have a question.
Yes.
Why December? Is that like arbitrary? Or how did you end up with December 2009? Is it because it's the end of the year? Is it your favorite month?
No.
The Mayan calendar.
It sounds good. Yeah, it does sound good.
Christmas time.
Christmas.
I'm not exactly sure why, but okay, so let me...
Okay, so I'm going to say September. Just let's be organized faster.
Can I answer that?
Yeah, please.
So, I work, for years I've worked in basic leadership development, and yes, I do sales training and whatnot, but I ran a youth entrepreneur center in Berkeley for a couple of years. The bold formation of leadership. I lived in Africa and we launched direct sales organizations. And what I know, it takes at least 18 months to develop real leaders. So someone can look like a leader the first week you train them, but you leave them alone, and then they don't look like that anymore, right? They do weird shit or they just go home, right? And so I think that your number, if you look at the real beginning of Twitter, for instance, I think the platforms that are I think LinkedIn already has leadership embedded into it. It's got a ingrained protocol driven by actually the founders, right? But I think that Twitter, at least for Twitter, I don't know about Flickr, but I think for Twitter, December of 09 is not a bad guess to see leaders at least solidify, like real leaders, not people who look like leaders or who are retweeting leaders, but look like leaders. That'd be my thoughts.
Okay, so I have two questions then. My first question is this a Twitter panel?
No, it's a social
just a
media.
dominant platform right now. Okay, I'm just checking.
I said Flickr.
I know you said Flickr, but we've talked a lot about Twitter, and so if we're going to go in that direction.
We talked about Facebook too.
Yeah, we talked about Facebook and LinkedIn.
And LinkedIn.
Well, I want to talk about Facebook, and I want to talk about LinkedIn, and I want to talk about Flickr, and there's all sorts of platforms out there that have, as far as I can see it, there's already leaders on Twitter as far as I'm concerned. There's certain Digerati, Technorati, Twitterati, I don't know, take a word, add a Rati behind it, and you got a whole new world. But there's already leaders within that space. Talk about Chris Brogan, talk about Jeremiah Yang. talk about
Guy
Guy
Kawasaki.
Kawasaki, talk about Jason Falls.
What about each other? We talk about each other.
Well, they do talk about each other, but they're also very inclusive. So it's not difficult for me to phone any of these guys up and say, hey, can you help me out?
There's also a new thing which has happened in the last maybe 3 months, the unfollow all
Is
movement.
Raul? You're not done though. I just want to. Okay, just sorry. I just want to make sure we go like.
We're going to get on your...
No, I just want to make sure he's
We'll
not.
get on, I know.
No.
You finished
I
your
am
thought?
done. Yeah. That's
Okay, I just want to check
So,
because she can, moderate a lot. So.
That's why I invited her.
I'm going to go. Asshole. Regardless of my moderating a lot, I think that there are a lot of leaders already in the Twitter sphere, which I hate, like blogosphere, it's not a word. There's
Twillage.
just, yeah, exactly. It's a village, it's a whatever. But there's different etiquette for each platform. And so how does that evolve? And where does that come from? And is it the leaders? Or is it the social norms? Or is it what just happens? Like the etiquette on MySpace, which theoretically none of us are on, right? Unless you're a band, in which case, rock on. But, oh, sorry, I should have done that. That's surfing, same thing. But there's a whole different norm for etiquette on MySpace than there is on Twitter, than there is on Flickr, than there is on LinkedIn. I just was invited to join a small world randomly, and there's a whole new world that I didn't even know about on
What's it
that.
called again?
A small
Can I
world.
follow up? I want to follow up with your question. I'm not going to answer it yet, but I want to follow up with the other thing. I think the fact is, we have become, I fear, this is one of my fears, I'm not exactly sure, I will ask my peers in the panel. I fear that because we're all on Twitter, or so many of us are on Twitter, we have sort of relegated the other platforms, LinkedIn and Flickr and email and all of those social networking sites to a secondary level because Twitter is so big, right? So
I say yes and no. I do. And I think it depends on where you're coming from, because before I started my new gig, I abandoned Facebook. I was not interested in what some chick who I went to high school with and her kid were doing. I don't care. But now that I have to do it from a professional perspective, I'm getting back into it. And they've made a lot of changes to make it better, and we can debate that later. But I don't know if we're going to the new shiny.
yeah, Shane, you
Yeah,
talked a lot about LinkedIn.
Want me to just
Yeah, go for it.
Okay,
Go
we're going to
for it.
stop for a second, and Shane's going to do his thing.
go whatever that was?
Spiel.